Well, it's a challenge to follow both of you. Well, I'm Roland Barksdale-Hall. That I am a contributing editor to Information Society and Justice. That's an international publication, and I'm also managing editor of QBR, Black Book Review, and that's associated with the Harlem Book Fair. I'm a historian that I have taught 20th century world history and various American history classes. I'm also a genealogist historian. Genealogist historian, I began by searching my family roots, which led to me looking at other families. My mother was a seamstress. She worked in the garment industry in New York City during that time, and so what we saw on the film, she was involved with that, having to sneak out to meet with the union leaders, and when they would see that you were talking with the union leaders, you would be fired. And my dad, he was a grievance man with United Steelworkers. My sister and I, we played secretary for him, and so we were very aware and cognizant of what was going on. And the first point that I would like to make as far as the labor unions were concerned, that the labor unions benefited everyone. That being my dad's secretary, there was Croatian Americans, Italian Americans, and they all shared the same problems. Some had problems with alcohol, attendance, and other issues, but everyone benefited from the labor unions. I just wanted to touch upon what was the need for a civil rights movement in the industrial cities and towns in the North. That my family members were Southern migrants from Georgia and Alabama, and they came here, and so we have lots of family still living in the South, and we would make regular visits, and I would say that I had an aunt and uncle sharecropping, and this was in the 1980s. The 1980s. And my uncle, when we would come to visit him, all he could give us was a box of peanuts. It was just like living in Sounder. And this is the reality, and there were many people, and even in the 1980s, they were frightened of their white neighbors, and it had to do with power. And many of the people were afraid to participate in voting because they lived out in rural districts. And so we say, when we look at these times, that there were laws in places, and even with the unions, I would say the unions helped many people, but initially, well, with the unions, people of color did not necessarily benefit. I have done numerous oral histories with workers and steel workers, and many people would report that even though the laws were on books and even the rules were on the books, that in many cases people did not know how to get access to their rights. And so it depended upon having a union organizer or a grievance man who would go to bat for them. There's one individual, and he's living from those times, and he was an advocate in our community, Reverend Robert Stewart, and he was very involved with at the Sharon Steel, where there was over 6,000 workers. And at the point when he was hired, there were only 400 African-American workers, that there was unions in place. But when he was hired there, 13 departments did not have African-Americans in them. And the reason was that the union would not support the grievances. There was a strike that occurred. Some called it a wildcat strike, and he was taken before the judge and asked, why was there a wildcat strike there? And pretty much, he said that there were over 350 grievances that the union did not respond to. And what this meant was that, we know there's seniority. There were those who had seniority, but they were not receiving the promotions. They were putting in for the promotions. And so what I say is that unions are a great thing to have, but it's the heart of the union that to have these in place, you have to have advocates. And what Reverend Stewart had to do, he had to go and get a power of attorney so that he could go and represent these individuals. And with the power of attorney, he went and he asked about individuals' pensions, because what had occurred, people had done the work and they were eligible to receive these pensions, but they were not receiving them. And so he had to press for these. And so what I'm saying is that the letter of the law has always been one thing in America. And even today, and I've also had this experience. Now, I'm the second generation. I have 4 college degrees, but I've also worked in academia where there were unions, and the same things occurred, where there were health benefits that we were eligible for, but by little tricks, individuals did not receive these benefits. But what has occurred in recent times, other segments of America are finding out just the underside of America, I will say. And that's what it is, where, because the American dream has been that everyone could work hard, and if you would work hard, you would have the benefit of the home, you would be able to go on vacation, and you would be able to send your children to college. And that was considered part of the American character, that if you were rugged and if you would work hard, you would succeed. But that has not been the case for a part of America, for some of the minorities, and now others are finding out. And we see the tears in their eyes as they're crying that they have worked hard, but now they're losing their homes. What we need is equity for everyone, because it is not fair that 1% of America has all of this wealth. And we see in the 1980s through NAFTA, and there's 4 different points, I'll just mention them. Through NAFTA and globalization, that we realize people in some places we call third world countries, they'll accept less pay. So some of the jobs have gone there. But another point, with our guarantor society that we were accustomed to during the administration of President Reagan and even Margaret Thatcher and President Mitterrand, they no longer saw a need for a society that would provide us with Social Security and other benefits. But then another issue is militarization. war has been used to spur our economy time and time again, and we have to find a peaceful and equitable way for our society to live. Thank you.